Okay, so welcome everyone for this edition of live event. We have today an interesting topic about the skills framework for information age. So I am very happy and honored to introduce Matthew Burrows, who has been past president of the Institute of Service Management, contributed to service management and project management standards and publications, has been a member of the SFIA Council and the Global Design Authority for SFIA, an internationally recognized thought leader, SFIA's accredited consultant trainer. He works with companies and governments to improve digital skills, management maturity, and how to attract, develop, and retain digital ICT, cybersecurity, and other technology. So thanks, Matt, for joining us in this edition of the live event. I hope you're doing well, and we can't wait to hear from you and all what is all about the SFIA that we're going to talk about today.
Great, Suresh. It's lovely to talk to you again. I'm very well, thank you, and I hope you are too.
Excellent. Indeed, I think we will be talking about the things, but let's get things started. I wanted to understand from your perspective, what is this skills framework for the information age? And give us a little bit of background around why this seems to be an important question for a lot of organizations talking about talent retention, talent recognition, and also trying to have a role fitment for job descriptions. So give us a little bit of rundown on.
I'll give you a bit of a background on that. I mean, basically, the technology world has changed over the last 20 plus years that we've been involved in it, Suresh. The technology has become even more important and business critical to organizations. Do you remember in the old days, if the technology failed, you always had a manual workaround. You could go back to paper and pen. You could do things manually until the clever people in the technology department could get the systems up and running again. It was all okay. We don't have that these days. The systems have become so business critical, so near to the end customer and to the end user that when those systems stop working, we have our services and products actually unavailable to our customers. We can't do things. The manual workaround is very rarely there. So of course, that means that actually we become even more dependent on the technology. And despite machine learning, artificial intelligence, and all of these things, guess what? It still comes down to the people. It's very much a people business because you've got to have people with the right skills and competencies to be able to design those technology systems, build them, keep them running. So despite, no matter how clever we are with the technology, it's all about the people and their skills. And because of that criticality, that has become even more important. And of course, it's also meant that there's a shortage in skills and competencies around the world, which can create an opportunity for some of us as well, but also a challenge to the organizations that we work for.
Excellent. Some of our audience are clients or professionals who work in IT industry, particularly the ICT that you talked about, developing new skills on agile, DevOps, cloud, and cybersecurity. I understand there are numerous flavors that have been brought in with SFIA8. So I'm quite keen to look at some of those new additions that could make it much more relevant for a company. So I will allow you to get things kick-started.
Okay, no problem. I'll cover all of those points as I go through and jump in if you've got questions that come up during this. I'm quite happy to take them. And if we want to type in messages and questions, we'll try and take those as we go through.
And for viewers who are listening to this live event, please do put it on the chat window what you have questions, and we'll be more than happy to queue it up with Matt at regular intervals. With that, no further ado, go ahead and let's keep it rocking.
Okay, let's get through. I've probably got too much content in my slides to an extent. We'll share these with people through the various mechanisms afterwards, but you've got a resource here. So the first thing is, why do we need to do anything about skills and competencies? I've already mentioned the fact that they become more critical. And that means that for organizations, actually they're seeing some negative impact, not having the right skills. And I won't go through all of these, but you can see it paints a picture that actually a lot of people are really fearful that they're not going to be able to achieve their digital strategy within their organizations purely because of not having the right people with the right skills and competencies at the right levels. And because the technology is so critical and front of house now, those outages and those skill gaps actually directly affect the business and the bottom line and the customers and the users and so on. And yet we still have a situation where most organizations don't actually know what skills they have. They've never assessed, they don't have a skill inventory. And it's a little bit like satellite navigation. You know, if you want to use your satellite navigation system to get somewhere, you have to tell the system where it is you want to go next. It also needs to know where you are now, because otherwise it cannot plot a route from where you are now to where you need to go next. And guess what? It's exactly the same with skills and competencies. You need to know where you are now. You need to know where you need to be next. So what skills do you need? So I talked about this criticality of these superhuman people, our technology specialists, the people with these skills that we're so dependent on. So one way to see how to keep those people in our organization and keep hold of the best talent is to look at the reasons why people leave. And it's not always about salary and benefits. The top reason for people leaving is actually that they don't see a clear career path and a development plan for them within the organization to retain their interest, to keep their current skills up to date, and to develop new skills and competencies. So if we look at these reasons, that gives us a clue for what we need to do within our organizations to hold on to the right people. I've referenced a couple of reports here which people might want to look up after the session, so I won't go through all of these, but you know, Gartner saying things have changed a little bit more post-COVID as well. You know, the skills that we need, and you mentioned this, Suresh, with agile working, it's not always about our role profile or our job description. It actually might mean we need a skill for a sprint starting next Thursday, or we need a mixture of 3 particular skills for a task that we need doing next week. So it's not just about static things called jobs and roles. It can be much more dynamic than that. So you need to know what skills you have so you can interrogate that data and say, who have I got with that skill at that level that could do this task? Yeah. So we live in a constantly changing environment. Individuals' skills change very regularly. You'll do a task tomorrow that'll help you develop a new skill or develop an existing skill to a higher level. You'll work on a project next month that'll help you develop we're constantly changing our skills. They don't stand still. And guess what? The skills that are required in the roles don't stand still either. Gartner is saying that actually your average job will change 10% year on year in terms of the skills and competencies that job needs. So whilst it's quite simple, we have these 2 data sets. What skills do we have? What skills do we need? Yeah. Both of those are changing. So we need to capture them, first of all, and then we need a mechanism to keep them up to date so that we can then interrogate that data and use it. And that's as much for us as individuals as it is for the organizations we work for, because it can be quite stressful, from a wellness and a stress point of view. Right. We all need to know where we are and what do we need to do to get better at what we do. And that's lacking for a lot of people in organizations. They say to their manager, what do I need to do to get better, to get my next promotion, or to achieve my objectives? And quite often the answer coming back isn't very clear. So we need to develop that two-way skills transparency, as Gartner calls it in this report. But that's simply saying, here are the skills you need to do your current job. Here are the skills you need to do your future job or different career paths that are open to you. We now have assessed and know what skills you have now. Because we know those things, we can plot the path and we can make sure you're doing the right development activity to get you where you need to be next. And what I'm also seeing is that some organizations, a lot of organizations are investing in generic human resources type platforms that actually dumb this down a little. I was having a conversation with a CIO not very long ago, and they were implementing one of the most popular HR platforms around that many people will be familiar with the names. But I'm not going to single out as one of them because they're all pretty much the same in terms of this. This particular system limited this CIO to 8 skills in the system at 4 levels. So they said, well, okay, how do I condense down everything that's in an IT department into that smaller range? I'm going to have a set of maybe service delivery skills and service operations skills. So that'll be one of my skills. Information security will be another. Strategy and architecture might be another. So they ended up with this situation that I've got in this cartoon here that's slightly humorous, but it's a real scenario. The guy in charge, the chief information security officer, wanted a new digital forensics specialist. The service desk manager wanted a new service desk analyst who part of their job was to grant people access to applications. So they picked the same skill, information security. Now, isn't that mad? Because they're so different. Information security administration is so different from digital forensics, is different from penetration testing. There are so many disciplines, you cannot summarize them in 8 skills. We need to go down into a greater level of granularity to even be able to specify what skills we need in a recruitment situation or in a development plan.
It's a great point, as you mentioned. Most of the organizations still struggle with the Excel spreadsheets around, okay, we have something called as resource planning, and they put all of those things into buckets and say, okay, what skills do we do with? So there's no science behind the way of working.
No.
You still see that happening in many organizations in
they buy one of these HR systems, that'll solve all of our problems. And then they find themselves in this situation where they recruit the wrong person because they ticked all the boxes. And they've got somebody who's definitely experienced, but they're not experienced at what they need them to do. And I see people trying to do it in spreadsheets, and then it needs to be more dynamic than that, because ultimately, whilst we're still talking about 2 basic data sets, what skills we have and what skills we need, actually the skills we think we have are not always the skills that we do have. So we've got to assess it, because unless we assess it, we don't find out the truth. And the truth is positive and negative, and we have to accept that. There are positive things. By assessing what skills you have, you find out and you confirm the skills you thought you had that you really do have. Great, good. I'm glad that I really got them. But you also get a positive that you find out skills you need that you didn't know you had. And now you know you've got them and you know who's got them. We can deploy them and use them. We confirm some risks we knew about. But this is the real danger area. Yeah. The skills we thought we had that we don't have. And in my experience, they're the sorts of skills that cause unpredicted outages, security breaches. When you look at all of those things that make the press as outages, most of them are down to not having the right person with the right skill at the right level tasked to do the activity.
Right.
Yeah. So that's companies that are doing well in this space and are, first of all, creating that skill inventory. And you do probably need a tool and a framework to help you structure that, because Otherwise, you're not talking the same language. And that's really my next point. That, you know, the first point is you need to accept that we need to know what skills we have and what skills we need. So that means we've got to assess it. It doesn't take too long if you do it well. Yeah, it can be quite easy, and and we can show people how easy it is. You've got to take a view on the skills you need, but you have to do that using a common language for describing it.
Correct.
So in the same way that in the service management world that we know well, Suresh, if I said incident to you, you'd know what I was talking about because we have that common language. We know what an incident is. We know what a problem is, what a change is.
Right.
Well, the easiest way to think about SFIA, the skills framework for the information age, is it's purely a common language for describing skills and competencies. And because it's used in nearly 200 countries around the world, it's been around for 20 years, it's regularly updated, that's the best thing we can use. It means that when we talk about a particular skill, it means the same to a recruitment candidate we're interviewing, or an agency we're talking to help us with that, or a training provider we're looking to get a training course that'll help us develop that skill. So we need a common language. But we also need to take a genuine interest in our people, because sometimes employers are a little bit guilty of treating somebody as their job title. And all of us are much more than just our current job or role. We have skills that even if we started in the same role on the same day as somebody else, just because of our background or the projects we've worked on or the activities we've done, we will have a slightly unique and different skill profile.
Right.
So treat people not just as a job, but treat them as an individual. Find out about all of their skills, because some of those skills they're not using in their job today might be the skills you need next week in a sprint, or in 3 months' time in the current role they're doing because things have changed, or in a future role. So get a complete picture of the skills. Then what organizations are doing is they're being really clear on what skills are needed for the jobs and the roles and the tasks that they need to do. So that gives individuals a really clear view of the opportunity and the career paths that are there for them. So that clarity is really helpful. And then with that data, you've got to keep it up to date, but let people use it. You know, as an individual, if I know my skills, and I know the skills in my role, I can see the gaps. I can have the right conversation with my manager. I can build a focused development action plan that helps me get to where I need to be next, which is good for me, but it's also good for my organization, my employer, and our customers as well. So get the data and then use it. Empower people and their managers to have a better conversation. And those are the key things. So I've summarized it there, that it's 5 key ingredients. You've got to have a consistent language for the skills, which is what SFIA gives us. You've got to know where you are against that framework. What skills do we have? What skills do we need? Keep those up to date as things change. Whenever they change, update it. Yeah. Use the data for gap analysis and development planning at individual level, at team level, at department level, at the whole organization level.
Yeah.
Simple conceptual view. Would you agree?
Yep, absolutely. I think it's spot on. To give some clarity around it throughout the organizations, that we all have the same way of doing it, and it will probably ease out a lot of these ambiguity in terms of what skills to expect. And there's a lot of ifs and buts. So we need to codify things. And I think you're right in what SFIA does to codify things much more simple across any industry. So it makes a lot more help.
That's absolutely fine. And the reason for doing it, all of these things on the screen, if we don't do it, we're going to get more of these issues coming up. So I'm not going to go through this digital skills management maturity scale, but what we'll do is we'll share a link after this session that if you're thinking about this, if the people listening are thinking about this from an organizational point of view, it takes about 10 minutes. They can do a really quick online free assessment that tells them where their organization is in terms of how good they are at doing this skills management piece, and where they need to be and how to get there as well. So we can give somebody something very practical to help their organization. But at the end, I'll also talk about some practical things you can do as an individual professional to help yourself as well. So my final slide will have those links on it, and we'll share those as well. You wanted me to talk a little bit about SFIA. We've just had a new version, so I was just going to give a quick overview of that, if that's okay, Suresh.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think what's happening is with all this digital skills we're talking about, what is really in demand? I'm looking at from a recruiter perspective, everybody's talking about, have we covered everything in SFIA, so that if an organization has started with SFIA with all new skills, are we doing constant update to the skills and competencies? There is one single place that I can all look into it and get.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been working on in the latest version. So yeah. Oh, so I've got it's playing sound at me here. So for some reason, but let me try and kill that. I don't know if that came across on the microphone. It's a video playing in the background on my slide, I think. So anyway, so SFIA8 is the latest version. We released it at the end of September, 28th of September. SFIA's been around for over 20 years, so it gets regularly updated. And the whole point is it has to change because the skills and competencies in our world change. We have new skills that come up, and that's reflected in the framework. So this new version, absolutely up to date with all of the skills that we could find that are out there in the real working world. So that's what we try to do with SFIA all the time. I've included some links where you can look at SFIA on the SFIA website, but I'll take you through just a quick overview of that. As I say, it's been around for 20 years. We regularly update it. You can see there's a pattern every 2 or 3 years. We've got a new version because of those things that change in the world. So in the latest version, we've got 121 professional skills in SFIA. So not the 8 we were talking about in that general HR system. We need 121 to describe the complexity of what we do. In the previous version, there were 102. So that shows you the sort of level of change. There's been quite a lot of new skills added. And each of those skills can be described at up to 7 levels. That's how the SFIA framework works. So 121 skills. None of them are all 7 levels in the framework, but up to 6 of those 7. The way the levels work, quite straightforward. Level 1 is an entry level, follow a predefined script, ask if it's not going, very much an entry level type skill, right the way up to levels 6 and 7, where it's more about strategy of the whole IT department and policy and so on. That's a broad summary of that. But these, to make it easy to work your way around SFIA, we structure them into categories. So we have these 6 categories. That doesn't mean that if you're in a service management or a service operations role, that all of your skills are going to come from the brown delivery and operation category. Most people will have skills from more than one category. It's just a navigation aid to help us group things together, help us find our way around the framework, just make it easy for navigation. So we have those skills. As I say, differences, if people are used to the previous version, version 7, I've summarized the key differences. So we've gone from 102 to 121 skills. It's actually 23 new skills because we've done some consolidation with the old ones. So that's why there's a net increase of 19. And you can see when we think of a skill at a level, so we'll use that incident management example we talked about before. Incident management's described at levels 2, 3, 4, and 5. Level 2, log the case, categorize it, prioritize it. Next level, you're also gathering information to try and resolve it. Next level, you're resolving it. Level 5, you're probably managing people and making sure they're following the process. So that's the sort of way we describe skills. So each skill at a level is a unique thing. So there's 495 of those skill at a level elements. We've added some new skills. We retired a few, although actually consolidated them. We've still got the same structure around categories. we also have this other part to SFIA, not just the professional skills, but what we call the generic levels of responsibility attributes. So this is more softer type skills, some people will refer to them as. So they're behavioral type factors. So we have autonomy, influence, complexity, business skills, and knowledge. So those 5, but they cover some of those other elements are not pure hard skills. We've changed the structure a little bit of the skills to make it easier to read. So readability has been a massive theme in SFIA8. And anybody that's looked at SFIA in the past and said, it's a little bit wordy, yes, it probably was. You know, we had some sentences that were more than 30 words in the sentence. So we've taken all of those away. We've condensed it to make it easy to read. And therefore, we have a much shorter overall description of a skill. So here I've given the example, strategic planning. It's one of those 121 skills, has a short 4-letter code just for lazy people like me who don't like writing big words. And then a summary, creating, maintaining a strategy, and so on. Some guidance notes that give you a context to what that skill is about in the working world. And then a description at each of the levels at which that skill is practiced. So strategic planning doesn't have a description for levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 because it's not that level of skill. It's something that's done at a, strategic level. So actually it requires lots of experience. People practice that at the higher levels, so 5, 6, and 7. So that's the skills. You asked what's changed. So I've summarized it here. There's 23 new skills, and you can see a few themes here. So vulnerability research and assessment, threat intelligence, so lots of cybersecurity, digital forensics type elements, data protection, data engineering, data science, business intelligence, so all those computational science type elements and the data science elements very much expanded because that's the reality, isn't it? Those things have become much more important. And you can see a few others, things like there's workforce planning, employee experience. So people getting better at managing employees and helping them with their well-being and experience as well. So those are things that have come to the front that were really perhaps hidden or not recognized as skills before. So I think that gives you an idea of the breadth of the new skills. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then there's been changes. I won't go through all of these, but it just gives you a flavor. You know, analytics is split out into 3 skills because it's a little bit more nuanced. And
I completely agree, because particularly when the space of analytics is a very broader term, and now we are talking about AIOps, we are talking about machine learning in terms of getting into deeper insights, because that's the level of skills that you need to do for invoking self-healing and auto-remediation part of the world. So absolutely. Do we have that level of competencies in a person to be recruited as part of site reliability engineering, for that matter? Because in the consulting engagement that you're doing it, the bigger problem is, how do I find the required skills? Can you please propose from a roles and responsibility perspective? Because the job description is telling something, but the skills that is required to map it is not really going in hand. There's a bit of a struggle around that space. So this helps to get more deeper insight.
Well, it makes it easier, because what you'll notice in the descriptions of SFIA, it's talking about what do people do. And this is really important. People have to do the activity. So it's actually an activity-based description in SFIA. So it's all about what do we do. Of course, we need the knowledge to back that up, but it's actually about where we put that knowledge into practice to develop a skill, to become proficient in that, and then to go on to be fully competent and professionally competent in that skill. So that's an important element to it as well. A few name changes for the people that were used to version 7. You'll see a couple of name changes as well. You'll also see a little bit of restructuring where some individual skills have moved things around a little bit, and it's purely to reflect the the changes in the working world. So things like governance and risk management have become less purely a technology type activity, and they're actually more of a general business activity. And this is something I'm seeing a lot of the technology skills are no longer just found in the IT department. They're actually across the organization. And that's why we're seeing so much more growth in the use of SFIA, because it's applicable a lot wider across an organization as well. So, and again, those generic levels of responsibility are what they say, generic. You know, they apply to people outside of a technology specialism as well. So they can be really useful much more widely. And they cover those behavioral factors, you know, things like collaboration, communication, creativity, decision-making, all of those things I've got listed there. So don't think of SFIA just as a techie, nerdy thing that describes the detail of what we do. It's actually, it covers a much broader spectrum. We're human beings. We need the right behaviors at the right level as well, because purely having our technical capability is not enough.
And I think that's a very valid point, because most of the people that we deal with, they want to look at, for example, we was interviewing someone for DevOps, and I said, what kind of skills do you need to have DevOps? And they said, hey, you know what? We know about Puppet, Chef, Docker, and all of this stuff.
Oh, that drives me mad.
And I say that a fool with the tool is still a fool. But what kind of other skills do you have in terms of collaboration between cross-functional teams? How do you work with a single unified goals and shared goals? And this is not really, and people are struggling. We have people who have technical expertise, but they don't have the required soft skills, or what I call as the humanized nature. So they don't know how to work with a team. They're not very collaborative. They're more about superheroes and heroines working on their own caveats, which I think is deadly, because you're letting the whole team down because of that one ad hoc performance. So I think it's very important to get this as a blended approach when we're trying to recruit talent, and I think this is helpful.
And some people in the past with SFIA have said, oh, it doesn't really help me with the behavioral elements. Well, it does, and it always has done. It's just we've not called them that before. So we're trying to emphasize it had all those things in there, but people didn't see them necessarily. And that point you make about the technologies is really key here. You know, if you say to someone, what skills have you got? I've got Java. Yeah, but Java isn't a skill, it's a technology. What do you do with the Java? Are you programming? Are you designing applications? Are you supporting? You know, the skills actually describe what you do with it. The technology is just what you do it with. So if you say to somebody, you know, a tradesman you have in your house, a plumber, what do you do? He doesn't say, I use a spanner. Yeah, a spanner is one of the tools he might have. A wrench is a tool that he might have in his toolbox. He doesn't describe himself by the tool that he uses. He describes, I install kitchens and bathrooms. He describes what he does. And that's the bit we miss. The skills are actually, what do you do with that technology? What the outcomes? How does it fit into that picture? And that's what SFIA does really well for us.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned the first thing to do is to answer the what skills do we have question. So you need to assess the whole person, not just their current role. You need to capture all of the levels at which they practice a skill, because going back to that incident management skill, if you just want the service desk manager to only supervise other people, they might only need that incident management skill at level 5. But if you're a small service desk where when it's busy, you need that service desk manager to pick up the phone and log and categorize and prioritize, actually their job description should say incident management at level 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah. If you only need them to do level 5, only include that. So you've got to be specific about all of the levels at which you practice a skill as well. And then the other thing is, it isn't the case that you either have a skill or you don't. It's not binary like that. People have partly or largely developed a skill, they've still got some more development in that skill at that level to become fully professionally competent. Yeah,
Right.
but that you have to recognize it's not zero. They have some skill, yeah,
Correct.
and they're using it and they're getting results, but they still need recognition of that gap that they have to fully master that skill at that level. So again, it's not a yes no, it's a more of a graduated thing to make it useful, and then also capture their generic levels of responsibility. Because if the thing that's holding them back is that they're not very good at influencing, or they don't have the communication elements of business skills, then that's the thing that they need focus on in their development plan, and they need help from their manager and mentors and others to do, not just the hard technical skill, the whole picture.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're getting some questions from people around that. What is the level of certifications and competency they need to go? You did talk about the assessment. So probably if you can deep dive into how these teams can get themselves involved in terms of assessing their self-assessment to competency assessment, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really simple online self-assessment that I'm going to share the link on my last slide that individuals can do. So all you need to do is to follow that link, fill in the form, press the button. It will send you an email with a link in there. So for an IT or technology professional, it may take them up to 1 hour to do that assessment. Some people do it in 15 minutes. Other people just like to take longer, and they might want to put a couple of hours aside and do it. On average, it takes people an hour. You don't have to do it in one go. And it's a structured survey that will take you through and make sure you consider all of the areas. And out of the end of that, for 1 hour's worth of time, you'll get your SFIA skills profile, the baseline that answers what skills do I have now. So that would be the first step I would suggest. And so we've made it easy, and we'll provide that link to do it. And that will highlight which skills you have that are just at a low level, where perhaps you've got the knowledge to support them, but you haven't had the chance to put that into practice yet, compared with the ones that you have put into practice, but maybe only a few times or not over a long enough period to become fully competent. So you're proficient, you can do what Sophia's describing, but you need more practice to get up to that full professional proficiency level. So that's the distinction that you'll see in the self-assessment. So you'll be able to know which level of those skills you have. And there's a bit of definition behind those, but there's a really big problem we've got in the technology world, is that we are very good at measuring the knowledge piece. But because, I mean, how many job adverts have you seen where they say you need your Prince 2 foundation certificate, or you need your ITIL foundation certificate? Now, that's great. I'm not being negative about that at all, but it only tells you that they have the theoretical knowledge. And for most jobs, you're going to need to know whether they've had the opportunity to put that theoretical knowledge into practice in a working environment. And that's something we need to get better at as an industry. We need to recognize those knowledge certificates for what they are, which is 10% of the picture. Do you remember the 70-20-10 model?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. 10% of your development is formal training. It's the knowledge element. 20% of it is near the job, coaching, mentoring, support. 70% of it's on the job. Exactly. And that's what we need. And managers need to think about that when they're helping people with development plans as well. Yeah, send them on the course so they've got the knowledge, but then put another action in their plan, which is the opportunity to put that knowledge into practice to develop the skill, become proficient. They've got to do it enough times that they can become fully proficient, and then they can go on to put that into practice over an extended period of time, become fully professionally competent. It's really important that. So 2 more slides, and I'm a bit conscious of the time, but are we okay for time at the moment, Suresh?
Yeah, I think, we would probably take questions now if you just do the last slide.
No problem.
I think a few questions
so that,
come in.
that's fine. And what I've got is just to show people that if you haven't seen SFIA, go and look at it on the SFIA Foundation website. And then my last slide is those practical next steps. So I mentioned if you're doing this on behalf of your organization, spend 10 minutes and do that digital skills management maturity assessment. It'll give you some useful tips on how to do it and a report that tells you where you are. If you're an individual professional, sign up and do your online SFIA-based self-assessment, compare yourself with industry-defined roles, start to build your development action plan. So that's my takeaways from this. So yeah, that's I'll leave that on the screen while we talk through the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question is in terms of from professionals per se. So they want to develop their career. Most of the people have certain skills which they think they are good at it. Yep. I don't know whether it's at knowledge level or competency level or proficiency level, but they want to aspire new roles. But so they want to have a look at, okay, I have existing skills. Let's say they go through the practical assessment and they say, this is where I am.
Yep.
But I want to be a cloud engineer. And I don't know what skills I need to have because the job description tells you certain things, but is there a way that I can look up, like a lookup table to understand what skills do I need to have? Then I can validate whether I'm there or I need to do it. Is that an option available for people?
Absolutely. So what we have in the tool, in the SkillsGX tool, is over 500 role templates in there. So cloud engineer would be one of them, and these are the standardized roles that have been defined by different professional bodies and governments around the world. So they're the ones that are published on the SFIA website. So we have the Australian public sector, we have the UK government DDAT roles, we have the NICE, the NIST cybersecurity roles in there. We've got a whole load of templates. So you can do a number of things. Once you've baselined your current skills, you could go into the role piece and you can sort it based on how well you match a role. So it will tell you which roles actually are a good match to your current skills. And that might open up some non-linear career paths, some career paths you hadn't thought about, not the obvious ones. But you can also pick a role as your future role and say, like, I'd like to become a cloud engineer. And you pick that as future role, and it will overlay the requirements of that role on top of your skill profile. You'll be able to see where you already meet or exceed the requirements, where you have gaps, and you can then use that to reflect it in your development plan.
Excellent. And this is from, for the organization perspective, like if an organization wants to have an inventory of skills and wants to look at, okay, I have a new project that is coming in, which requires 5 service delivery managers, 2 project managers, and 1 business analyst, just as a part of an arbitrary example. Do I need to invest? What should I do as an organization to build a matrix for all the resources that I have quickly, right? Because you have so many people in an organization.
You can do it really quickly. You know, for an organization, you can do it in 4 to 6 weeks elapsed time, right? And actually, if you do that DSMM assessment, it will tell you the steps to do that, how organizations typically do it. So it'll tell you exactly how to do it, but it's quite simple. You have to get the comms right, first of all. So you've got to engage your workforce, explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, because if you don't tell them, they'll just guess, and they might it might cause negative feelings, right? You're doing this for positive reasons. So tell them what they are, tell them what's in it for them. So there's always a communication element. Then you do the skill inventory, which is just getting them all to do that skill assessment that I've mentioned down there. And then you've got the answer to what skills do we have. While you're giving them a couple of weeks to fit that in around their other commitments, you profile your jobs and roles and put those in the system in SFIA terms so that they're there for doing that gap analysis. And then once people finish their self-assessments, as an organization, you could say, right, I need 3 business analysts, you know, the list that you had there, and it will tell you how many you've got, and how many people you've got with the right skills that might be in a different role that you can move across. It will give you all of those answers because you've got a good set of current up-to-date data that you can analyze. So the analytics is really important. And once you have those two data sets and you have the mechanisms of keeping them up to date, you can ask all sorts of questions of that. Where are my biggest people and skill related risks? Can I do this project? Can I launch this new service? No, not before I've upskilled 10 people with this extra skill at this higher level, so it will show you all of that.
Right. And the last question that we have is, in terms of what are the training options available for people to equip themselves around SFIA, right? And how can SFIA help them to gain some of this knowledge and understanding that people can apply it within their own groups, within their own line of business, or within their entire organization?
Okay, yeah, there are a number of options, and some of it depends on people's preferences. The world of training's changed a little bit recently. We all used to go on in-person training courses, and COVID's changed that. But it was changing before that, to be fair. People were doing much more online self-paced training or blended learning with a mix of instructor-led and a mix of self-paced. All of those options are available with SFIA. So the first thing to say, as an individual IT professional, you do not need to become a SFIA expert to get value from it. You can just do the self-assessment and you'll know enough about it. But if you're doing it for your organization, you probably do want to have a couple of people go through the SFIA foundation level training, which takes them about 35 minutes. That gives them the basic knowledge. If they then want to step up to the next step, we have a SFIA practitioner training, which is about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours with a bit of homework, because there's some mandatory homework in there. But you can do that either in a public training course, and there's a schedule of them on the SkillsGX website, which you can see, or you can do it self-paced and do it at your own time and submit your homework, and then a SFIA trainer like myself will mark that homework and give you feedback on that. So you've got a few options. And then if you want to go even further than practitioner and you want to become a SFIA consultant, there's another module, a training module for them. There's also training for SFIA assessors. And then we've actually built in quite a lot of self-paced training into the SkillsGX tool, so that once you've got a license as an organization, you don't have to pay anything extra. You can just consume all of the SkillsGX and SFIA training within your license cost. So it makes it a lot easier. So hopefully we've given people a lot of options there, and they're all explained quite well online.
Excellent. So I think with TaUB Solutions being a partner with SkillsGX, we hope we can support on training opportunities and consulting and assessments part of it. So we will put on all the links after this particular course, up to the session. So please feel free to reach out to us if you need more information around it. And thank you so much, Matt, for spending a lot of time today and giving a lot more deeper insights. And we will share this, the slide deck, as well as the resources for people to go there and get this done. Yeah.
My pleasure, Suresh. It's been lovely to talk to you, and I hope we've given people some useful information that they can go and use.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everyone for your time today, and we hope to meet you again in the next 2 weeks in another episode of real life sessions. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.